Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? All right? Yeah, okay. I usually put the data scientist bit first and the economist bit after because it's cooler. Anyway, so yeah, I work for myself as a data scientist and economist. I do data analysis consulting projects for lots of corporate and government clients on all sorts of different things. For about a decade, I did all my work in Excel and Stata. And then 5 years ago, I was enlightened and was reborn into the world of R. And so for almost all of the visual stuff that I do, I use ggplot. Who else uses ggplot regularly? Most of you? Okay, so I'm kind of assume you already know a bit about ggplot. This is going to be kind of a tutorial on how to make your ggplot charts look good. So it's kind of the polar opposite of Hackenwell's talk, which was high-level stuff. This is going to be kind of detailed, but hopefully useful. So let's start with why. Why on earth would you want to do this to make your own theme for this thing? And it's going to be time-consuming. It's going to be frustrating. You're going to have to Google a lot of things. And so here's an example of a page from one of my reports. And you can't see the details, but it doesn't matter. So I've got a chart in here that I made in ggplot, and then the rest of it's just a Word document. The rest of the report is written in Word. But I've formatted this chart I think it looks nice, right? I've used, and in particular, it looks nice in the context of the page that it's stuck into. So the font in the chart is the same as the font in the text. The sizes are the same, more or less. The spacing is appropriate. And I think overall, as a page, this looks nice and consistent. If instead you take a kind of pre-existing chart theme and you stick it into your page, it'll probably look all right, but it might not look so consistent. And in my world, where I work doing consulting projects, it's really important to kind of present stuff really nicely. Presentation matters a lot to people. They take you more seriously if your stuff is presented nicely. So I think it's worth spending the time on this. And so that's what I wanted to talk about. So in ggplot, you might have encountered the themes before. So there's some built-in themes. There's also a package called ggthemes, which has a bunch of other themes that you can apply to your charts. And what they do when you do this is it just changes how the thing looks in various ways. There's a very important thing to remember. The theme affects how everything looks except for the stuff that shows your data. And so this can be kind of frustrating, that you need to style your points or your text on the charts or other stuff appropriately to match your theme, but it's just something you need to keep in mind so that you don't get confused about why are things not looking how you wanted them to look. So the basics. I'm going to have some code on the slides. I hope you can follow. It's not going to be too complicated. So a theme is just a thing you add to your plot, right? So you're making a chart in ggplot, and then you've got my theme, and you just add it on at the end, and then that affects how it looks. How do you make the theme in the first place? The easiest way to do this is just to modify an existing theme. So you go, my theme is theme minimal plus, and then you use this theme function, and you put a bunch of stuff in there, and that makes your theme. You don't have to start with theme minimal, but that's possibly quite a good starting place because it's a minimal thing. You don't have to remove too much junk from it to start with. There's also, in the ggthemes package, there's the theme foundation function, which is another starting point. The nice thing about this is it has options for the font family and the size of that font that you're going to use, which is very important because a lot of the stuff that you're styling is text. So the theme function, here it is in all of its glory. I managed to fit it on the slide. I don't know if there's an R function that has more arguments than the theme function. So when you get into this and you look at the documentation, and it's kind of daunting, right? You go, oh my goodness, what are all these things and how can I possibly figure out what I need to do? Fortunately, most of the time you only need to play with a few of these to change some stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the more important things in here and just give you a little intro, and then you can go off and figure it out for yourself later. So the way you use this theme function is you pick the things in here that you want to change, and you set them equal to, most of them, you set them equal to one of these 4 basic theme elements, okay? And so element blank is get rid of that thing. I don't want to see that thing, so delete it from the chart, which is quite often what you want to do. And then you use element text, to style text things, and that has a bunch of arguments that specify what the text is going to look like. There's element line for line things, and element rect for rectangular things. And so most of the work you need to do in setting up your theme is setting those arguments of the theme function equal to these with the appropriate values specified. There's also 3 really useful functions. There's a margin function for setting margins around things. If you're really fussy like me and you want things to be just in exactly the right place and the right distance from the other stuff, then you have to fiddle with the margins. So you specify that. The rel function is for setting sizes of things, and in particular relative to sizes of other things. So this is particularly useful for fonts where you want something to be slightly bigger than something else, then you can set its relative size. And the unit function is also for setting sizes of things, and in particular units like points or millimeters or centimeters or whatever you want to use. So a quick example, and I'm sorry the projector is not that great, but so here is a ggplot I made from the infamous empty cars data set. It's a super complicated chart. Normally you wouldn't make something that's ridiculously complicated for such a simple data set, but I wanted to illustrate. So there's a couple of facets I've got here based on the transmission of the vehicle, and there's also 2 different scales. I've got the shapes of the points and the colors of the points, just because I wanted to illustrate, but I wouldn't advise doing this kind of thing in practice. And you can't see it super well, but this is just the default chart that comes out when you do this. And then I wanted to just quickly talk through how can we change a few things, make this, in my opinion, a little bit cleaner. So let's make a theme, right? My theme. And in this case, I've started with the theme gray, which is the default theme. And I've done a bunch of things to it. I've got rid of the tick marks on the axes because I hate axis tick marks. So we make them blank. The panels, in this case, are the things behind the 2 different facets. So I've got rid of that horrible gray background and made it a white background. I have made the grid lines gray, which you can't see on this projector. And I've styled what's called the strip text, which are the titles of those 2 facets. So the words automatic and manual up there. I've played around with the margins and the sizes of those. And I've got rid of the gray backgrounds on those as well. So if you could see it better, I think you'd see this looks a bit nicer than the default chart. And obviously you could keep playing with it some more to make it even better. So it's relatively simple and straightforward to get into changing these things. Now I wanted to quickly run through the important elements of the theme that you're going to be fiddling with. So the plot, or the plot area, is everything that's in the blue area in this chart. And for this you can set simple properties, its background, and then this is where the title and the subtitle and the caption, if you have them, of the chart all live, and then there's a margin around this thing. As I said, the panels are the things behind the area where your data is being displayed. If you don't have facets, then you just have one panel. If you have multiple facets, then there's a panel for each of those. And again, these have backgrounds and borders. There's also the spacing between the panels, which can be quite a useful thing to adjust. And the panel grid is the grid lines that show up on the chart or not, if you want them. Then there's legends, and I hate legends with a passion. They're so complicated and fiddly. And so I always try not to have legends on my charts if I can avoid it. But if you do need one, in this case we've got 2 legends just to make it interesting. And the legends have a whole bunch of attributes that you can adjust. They have their own backgrounds and margins and spacing. You can also adjust the properties of the title and the text within them. Then you can say, where do I want my legends to be? And do I want horizontal legends or vertical legends? And in addition to the legends, and I put this here especially because I got confused about this so many times, is that the legend also has a box around it, so legend.box. Even if you just have one legend, there's still a box around that one legend. And this box has its own properties of, in particular, margin and spacing, which determine how far the legend is from other stuff. So if you're, again, like me, really fussy, you want the legend to be in exactly the right place, you have to fiddle with this box thing, as well as the properties of the legend itself. Then there's the strip, as I said. Those are, if you have facets, those are the things at the top of the facets that are their titles, and those also have backgrounds. You can choose where they're placed, and you can style the text within those. And then finally, the axes, of course. So axes have titles and text. They have ticks. and there is the line of the axis itself, which you can style separately if you want to. So those are some of the important basic bits of the chart that you will need to adjust if you're creating your own theme. To make life a bit easier, ggplot has this concept of inheritance of styles in themes. And just quickly, this works a bit like CSS. So you specify, if you know how that works, so you specify styles at a kind of high level, and then those propagate down to lower level things that are of the same type. So there's line, rect, text, and title, which affect everything that is either a line, rect, text, or title. So very quickly, how to use that. Let's say you wanted to change the font of everything on your chart. You don't have to do this separately. You just go, I want all my text things to have this font family, and then that propagates down and affects everything. Since I'm running out of time, I'll skip that, and just very quickly, for extra credit, what you can do is turn your theme into a function. I won't work through the example. I've got the slides online, and you can read it. So you turn your theme into a function, and you can use this in cases where, for example, sometimes you want your chart to have vertical grid lines, but most of the time you don't. And when you do want to have those vertical grid lines, you want to change a few various things in the chart. For example, in this example, get rid of the tick marks and show the grid lines at the same time. Then use a function to do that. Will make your life easier if you're using this theme for a whole bunch of different types of charts. So thank you. I ran out of time. I put the slides and the code for the examples on GitHub, so if you want to go and read them and learn. Thank you. And there's a question. Why do I hate legends? apart from them being fiddly, right? They're really fiddly to style and get them right. But I think just from a reader's, or the reader's point of view, who's looking at your chart, it makes life more difficult for them because their eyes have to bounce backwards and forwards between the chart and the legend, and I have to go, okay, the blue dots are this thing and the red dots are that thing, and you have to keep it. You have to use a little bit of your memory, your precious memory, to remember those things while you're looking at the chart at the same time. And I just think that makes life hard for readers. So if you can avoid legends, then that's great, but obviously not always possible. Another question: Do you have any advice for testing the accessibility of a theme to those with disabilities, such as colorblindness or short-sightedness? Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know about short-sightedness, but colorblindness, yes, there is a really, if you've got a Mac, I'm not sure if it's available on Windows, but if you have a Mac, there's a really good app called Daltonism, and it will kind of overlay a window over your screen and kind of simulate to you what you're showing will look like to people with various kinds of color blindness. And I don't know if it's exactly what it looks like because I'm not colorblind, but it gives you an idea if people can distinguish those colors or not. So I do use that, particularly if I'm doing something that I know would be viewed by a wide audience. Then that's a very helpful app. So Daltonism is the name of that app. And the last question: Do you have an example of? Sorry, I can't read. ODREL, it's a function. I don't even know what that function is. So I'm sorry. No, I don't have an example of that function. But maybe whoever asked that question, come and talk to me afterwards, and I'll figure out what that was. All right. Thank you.